Hey folks, I'm Saeed, the Codogrammer, and in this video, we're going to look at functions in Kotlin. So let's get straight into it. So I'm here in IntelliJ Ultima in a Kotlin project. So you can see that along here. I'm just going to minimize that. And here we are in the editor pane. So what is a function? A function is a named piece of code that you can pass some parameters to and usually get a response back from it or get it to do something. If it just does something and doesn't return anything, it's termed as side effecting. But normally functions will return a value to you. So for example, you might have an add function. You pass it two numbers, it adds them and returns the value back to you. Okay, so the first thing we have here is a main method, which is an entry point to our program. So you can see the little green triangle here, which allows us to actually run the application. So we can just run that just to see what that does. Okay, you can see that prints out hello world. So that's our entry point function and it's denoted with the fun keyword. All right, so next up, let's just declare a simple function that isn't a main function. And that is this one here called say hello. Now it takes a parameter, which means it takes a value, and the name of that parameter is on the left, which is name. So the name is name, which is a bit confusing, but basically it's going to say hello to that name. And the type of that parameter is string. So notice that the name is on the left and the type is on the right. Okay, so that could be something like age as well, for example. Okay, and then that goes ahead and prints hello to the name. So let's just call that function here. Let's say hello, say Saeed, and let's give that a run. And there you go, it says hello Saeed. Okay, so you got hello world and hello Saeed, and in this case it's calling the function. Now we didn't have to prefix the function with anything, a class name or an object name or anything like that, because it's inside this same file. So I'm just going to comment that out. Now another thing to note here is that the type declaration on the right hand side, which is the type of the parameter, that is mandatory, so you have to declare it. It doesn't have to be a string, it could be an int, for example, a number, but we're going to go with string in this particular case. All right, so the key takeaway so far is that the name is on the left and the type is on the right, and the type is mandatory. Minimize that. By the way, don't forget to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with the latest Kotlin tutorials and info. And for more general tech content, check out the main channel, which I will link to in the description below. Okay, where were we? Parameters in Kotlin can have default values. So here, for example, we have a say hello method, say hello to, and in this case, we give it a default value of world, okay, which doesn't really make much sense. Let's change that to something else like mo. And then if we call that function from here, and remember we call it say hello to. So let's just run that and see what that does. So that says hello world and hello Saeed, which is the value that we pass in here. Now, if we do not pass anything here, we don't pass a value in for that parameter and we run it again. In this case, it says hello mo because it's defaulted to that particular value that we specified. And the default value is just specified with an equals and then the actual value after the parameter declaration. Okay. Now, another interesting thing in Kotlin is that you can have functions within functions, nested functions effectively. So you've got a say hello method here with a parameter name string, and inside you want to print the name, but you want to format the name. And in this case, to format it, we're changing it to uppercase. Now we could have just done name.uppercase, so we don't actually need to declare a function here, but it's just to demonstration purposes that you can have a function within a function. The outer function being say hello 3 and the inner function being format name. Okay. And then you can just refer to it normally as if it was a function anywhere in the file. All right, so let's move on and let's have a look at functions that have a return value. So in this example here, we've got a subtract method, which as you would expect, subtracts y from x and returns the value to us. Now, when it returns the value, we have to declare the type. And in this case, the type is int, meaning an integer, and the values passed in are also integers. So let's just try calling that method and see what that does. So if we say subtract and 10 and 5, no problem. So you'd expect a response of 5 in this case. So let's just run that. And look, nothing happened because the return value, we never actually did anything with it, right? So this method, although it computed the actual value, so let's just click on that and have a look. It computes the value, but it then returns the result of that computation. We didn't actually print it out inside this method. So let's assign this to a type. So introduce local variable, say val subtract, and then we can print out and subtract. All right, so let's just run that again. All right, now you can see it prints out 5 because we're actually doing something with the response that was returned. So let's jump back to that method there. That was the subtract method. Okay, so just to reiterate, the return type, int in this case, is declared after the colon in this first line of the function. All right, so another neat thing that you can do in Kotlin is to declare a function using an expression body. And And that means we've got no curly braces here with the function body inside those curly braces. In fact, we've got it all on one line, and we can refer to that function just as we do any of our other functions. All right, so the next thing is that you can specify the names of an argument when you're calling the function. Now, this is particularly useful when you have a lot of arguments, that you're calling a function that has a lot of arguments. So let's look at an example of a function with a lot of arguments. So this has got a bunch of Boolean parameters that you can pass in. And if you were to call this function normally, you would do something like that. And then you've got loads of parameters. Now, in this case, IntelliJ is helping us because it's telling us the names of those parameters. But if I had those hints turned off, or if I was in any other IDE that didn't have those hints enabled, this would just look like a bunch of trues and falses, and I wouldn't really be able to tell what those mean. It doesn't make this method very easy to read. So what you can do is to specify the names if you want to. So you don't have to do it for all of them. You can just do it for some of them. It's completely optional, but actually a really useful feature. And as you can see in this case, it makes the call slightly easier to read if you didn't have these hints enabled in IntelliJ. All right, what about the case where you have no return? For example, you have a function that just does something. So in this case, this just prints something. It doesn't actually return anything. Well, in Kotlin, you can declare the unit return type, which means no return. And the best way to think of this is if you have a Java background, you would declare void, a method that doesn't return anything. Now, unit is optional, so you don't actually have to declare it. It's default. So it's probably better to just omit it, but it's just something to be aware of, that unit is kind of the equivalent of void, where you have no return from the function. In other words, it just does something, has some kind of what we call a side effect. All right, so that pretty much sums up our discussion on functions for now. Let me know if you'd like me to go into more of the nuances of functions in Kotlin in the next video, or move on to the next topic. I hope that was useful. Drop me a comment in the comment section below if you have any feedback. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.